Hey, it's Bob Nagan, and in this episode of Real Retail TV, we are going to talk leases. So a lease for a piece of property where you are going to house your store is one of the most important documents in your business. It can be written in your favor or it can be prohibitively onerous. And believe me, I've been through both situations. So I know that there are a lot of people who are constantly thinking about renewing, thinking about leaving, thinking about moving. And so that prompted this episode of Real Retail TV. I was thinking about how many different locations the Mackinac Kite Company had in the the 19 years that I was there. And I quit counting at about 35. We had kiosks in malls. We had stores in malls. We had stores in tourist malls. We had stores in downtowns. We had stores everywhere. So I have a lot of experience with leases, and not all of it is good. First lesson, hire pros. Don't do this on your own. Recently, somebody asked about it on our Whiz Bang Retailers Facebook group. And whenever anybody asks for legal advice or professional advice, particularly legal or accounting advice, I always jump in and say, you need a pro. Don't get your advice from your brother-in-law's, sister's, nephew's, uncle. Get a pro involved. Find a good lawyer. Find a good commercial real estate professional and work with them. And when I say find them, I don't mean look up in the phone book. I mean go out and ask for references. Talk to your business friends. Get somebody good who people you know, like, and trust. So that's the first thing. Because things can go wrong. So I'll share a quick story with you. The first time we opened in a mall, it was Woodland Mall in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we were really excited, right? The mall was the big time. And so it was time. We just had a temporary store, but we were hoping that it would become something permanent. We had just started to do toys. We were starting to do yo-yos, and we thought we were on to something. So it was a temporary spot. And the gentleman the leasing agent was quite pleasant and, well, he was a good salesperson and the lease seemed simple. And Susan, her friend Marilyn, a very, very bright, experienced person, the three of us thought, we don't need a lawyer. We'll just sit down, the three of us, and we'll read it line by line. Three of us, line by line. We read it. Hey, this is good. We signed it. And a couple of months later, they said, we're going to move you. And we said, wait a minute, you can't move us. We have a lease. And the guy's name was Milt. He said, well, read your lease. And so sure enough, we read the lease again and we realized we had read it incorrectly. And yes, they did have the right to move us, even after we had spent all of this money building out one temporary store. Now we had to move into another temporary store and build it out. Reinforcing the point, hire a lawyer. Never, ever count on your own intelligence and intuition to sign a legal contract. So that's the first thing. Hire pros. Don't ever sign a legal document without having consulted a lawyer. The next thing to think about is that things go wrong. You know, when you sign a lease, you're going to open a new store. You're going to move into a bigger location. You're going to move across town. It's our nature as entrepreneurs to think that everything is going to be hunky-dory and that everything is going to go smoothly, but the reality is they don't always. things do go wrong. So this idea of hope for the best and plan for the worst is incredibly applicable when we talk about leases. And so the reason that you want to plan for the worst is because you owe. When you sign a lease, it is a promissory note. It is exactly like if you take out a loan from the bank. And if you can't honor it, they will go after it. Talking to a client, several months ago, and they wanted to get out of a lease. They were done. Multiple stores. They had one store that was a perpetual pain in their tuchus, and they were just done with it, and they were trying to figure out what to do. And the first thing I did was I said, okay, how many years are left on it? How much is your monthly payment on it? And there was about $400,000 left. The landlord is not going to let you slide. Here is something else that was taught to me by a customer who was also a lawyer for a mall company. He was a lawyer for one of the big Taubmans, a big mall company here in the Midwest. And one day, in a moment of weakness, he looked at me and he said, Bob, the mall is not your friend. You know, as small business people, we tend to think that everybody is working together, that we're all enthusiastic about helping each other out. The mall does not look at it that way. Most landlords recognize that they have a business. Sure, they're friendly and helpful in the middle of negotiations, but they're trying to get what they want out of the relationship also. So the mall is not your friend. So here's a couple of pieces of advice when you start thinking about negotiating a lease. First of all, you might want to consider having a clause in the lease that says if you don't hit certain projections at 6 months or a year, that the lease is terminated, right? So if your business doesn't do what you think it's going to do, you have an out. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to develop outs, and we're trying to get them written into the clause. You can also have a buyout clause, right? So if I do decide to vacate the premises before my lease is up, I can buy it out for X amount of dollars. So that's another way to build it in. When you start thinking about your lease, again, you come into it with all of this enthusiasm. I want to lock in a low rate and this spot for a long time. But guess what? Your enthusiasm may not be met with reality. So my advice, again, based on a lot of experience, is see if you can write a short lease with lots of options. That way you have flexibility. Remember, the mall is trying to get their stability. The mall is trying to look out for their best interests. Your job is to look out for your best interest. Something else that you can write in is that you have the right to sublease it. So if you have a spot and it doesn't work out, you build into the contract that if you find somebody to take that space, you are no longer financially responsible for that lease. Okay. And you also want to write into it so that if they lease out the spot, that you are no longer responsible for the lease. So all of these things are just sort of the check marks for you to think about when you start thinking about writing a lease or negotiating a lease or signing a lease. But the main thing that I wanted to say to you is to recognize that the person you're talking to will be kind and friendly and helpful and enthusiastic. And that is all well and good. Of course, you want to create a win-win relationship with your landlord. Of course you do. But recognize that things don't always go the way that you want them to go. And your job as a prudent business person is to negotiate a lease that protects you and your family. So I hope that you found that helpful. If you have any stories, good and bad, about your experience with leases, please put them down below. I'm sure everyone would like to learn from your experiences. I know I would. I'm Bob Nagin, and we'll talk soon.